remembered the line from the Hindu scripture, the Bhagavad Gita. Vishnu is trying to persuade the prince that he should do his duty, and to impress him takes on his multi-armed form and says, "Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds." I suppose we all thought that one way or another.
Did you know that during World War II, a top-secret mission to build the world's first atomic bomb was launched to stop Nazi Germany's nuclear program? It was called the Manhattan Project, and it was one of the most fascinating and controversial scientific endeavors in history. The Manhattan Project brought together the brightest minds of the time to create a devastating weapon that would change the course of history. But it wasn't just any military program, it was a scientific and engineering marvel that faced many challenges and setbacks along the way. In this video, we'll take a closer look at the history, science, and impact of the Manhattan Project, exploring the key players, the scientific breakthroughs, and the lasting legacy of this groundbreaking program. Get ready for a thrilling ride through one of the most fascinating chapters in scientific history. The 1940s. The Manhattan Project was a top-secret research and development program that took place during World War II. The project was named after the Manhattan Engineer District of the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, which oversaw the program. Its main goal was to develop the world's first atomic bomb, which would eventually be used against Japan in August 1945. The Manhattan Project was launched in 1939 after the famous physicist Albert Einstein wrote a letter to President Franklin D. Roosevelt, warning him of the potential dangers of Nazi Germany's nuclear research. The letter convinced Roosevelt to allocate funds for research into atomic energy, which led to the creation of the Manhattan Project. The project employed some of the world's most brilliant scientists and engineers, including Enrico Fermi, Richard Feynman, and Robert Oppenheimer. The research and development took place in secret locations across the United States, including Los Alamos, New Mexico, and Oak Ridge, Tennessee. The Manhattan Project was one of the most expensive and ambitious scientific endeavors of the 20th century, costing the U.S. government over $2 billion at the time, equivalent to over $30 billion today. The project marked a turning point in human history, as the development of atomic weapons changed the world forever. The history of the Manhattan Project. The Manhattan Project was a research and development undertaking during World War II that produced the first nuclear weapons. It was led by the United States with the support of the United Kingdom and Canada. The project was named after the Manhattan Engineer District of the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, which managed the program. The project was launched in 1939 after physicist Leo Szilard and his colleagues wrote a letter to President Franklin D. Roosevelt, warning him of the possibility of Germany developing nuclear weapons. The project was initially small, but it quickly grew into a massive undertaking that involved thousands of people. The science of the Manhattan Project. Now let's talk about the science behind the Manhattan Project. At its core, the project was about creating a chain reaction of atomic nuclei, which releases an enormous amount of energy. This is what we call nuclear fission. The key to unlocking this energy was the creation of a highly enriched uranium-235 and plutonium-239. The scientists working on the project had to overcome many challenges, including the design of the reactors and the separation of the highly enriched uranium. One of the biggest challenges that the scientists faced was the need to create an enormous amount of energy in a very short period of time. This required the development of sophisticated timing devices and explosive lenses that could focus the explosion into a highly concentrated blast. The scientists also had to come up with ways to prevent the bomb from accidentally detonating during transport or handling. The people of the Manhattan Project. Behind every great project, there are great people, and the Manhattan Project was no exception. Some of the brightest minds in the world worked on the project, including famous scientists like Albert Einstein, Richard Feynman, and Enrico Fermi. These scientists worked tirelessly to overcome the technical challenges of creating the atomic bomb. But there were also many others who contributed to the project in different ways, from the soldiers who guarded the facilities to the engineers who built the reactors. One of the most interesting characters in the Manhattan Project was a woman named Lise Meitner. Meitner was an Austrian physicist who worked with Otto Hahn to discover nuclear fission. However, when Hahn was awarded the Nobel Prize for their work, Meitner was excluded, leading to accusations of sexism and discrimination. Meitner went on to work on the Manhattan Project, and she played a key role in the development of the first nuclear reactor. The impact of the Manhattan Project. The atomic bombs dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki had a devastating impact on the people and infrastructure of those cities. The bombs killed approximately 200,000 people and caused widespread destruction, with many buildings and infrastructure destroyed in the blasts and subsequent fires. The bombings also had long-term effects on the people who survived, with many suffering from radiation sickness and long-term health problems. The bombings also had a profound impact on the global political landscape, ushering in the nuclear arms race and the Cold War. The bombings were controversial at the time and remain a subject of debate and discussion to this day. Some argue that the bombings were necessary to end the war and save lives, while others argue that they were unnecessary and inhumane. In the aftermath of the bombings, there were widespread calls for international agreements to limit or eliminate the use of nuclear weapons. The bombings were a key factor in the development of the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, which was signed in 1968 and remains in effect today. Despite the long-term impacts of the bombings, the U.S. government did not officially apologize for them until 2009, when then Secretary of State Hillary Clinton visited Hiroshima and expressed regret for the bombings. The Manhattan Project also had a lasting impact on science and technology. The development of nuclear energy has led to the creation of nuclear power plants, which provide a significant portion of the world's electricity. The project also spurred advancements in other areas, such as computer science, material science, and engineering. Fun facts about the Manhattan Project. Now that we've covered the history, science, and impact of the Manhattan Project, let's wrap up with some fun facts that you may not have known about the project. The Manhattan Project was so secret that even President Truman didn't know about it until after he became president. The project cost over $2 billion at the time, making it one of the most expensive research projects in history. Some of the scientists working on the project had to live in trailers in the middle of the New Mexico desert, where the project's main research facility was located. The code name for the project was Development of Substitute Materials, to keep it a secret. The first successful test of the atomic bomb, known as the Trinity test, took place in Alamogordo, New Mexico, on July 16, 1945.